Among many Israeli soldiers, it's taboo to admit to suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. This young reservist was so traumatized by October 7th that she was never able to return to service. Each siren resurfaces the trauma.
הכל טוב, כמה נשימות והכל עובר. קחי איזה נשימה עמוקה.
At this horse ranch south of Tel Aviv, soldiers diagnosed with PTSD are receiving treatment. Danny owns the ranch. From the start of the year, he's been working closely with the Ministry of Defense, which provides funding for the troops' care.
Like 7 years ago, we opened the gates of the farm to all who needs something, help. But since the 7th of October, it goes dramatic, much higher. Every day, people approach us and want help.
Yes.
Harel was an elite soldier who served both in Gaza and southern Lebanon. His wife insisted he seek treatment as he was unable to readapt to civilian life.
Once I was walking around in the park with my dog, and a kid came from behind me on his bike, and I just jumped, turned and grabbed him. Then I immediately apologized. I hadn't done it intentionally. It was like a reflex. He got scared, and it scared me too.
Israeli troops are mostly made up of young people, like 22-year-old Meir, who's currently considered unfit to serve.
I do have things to say. It's hard to formulate words. I can't get into all the details because it can be overwhelming. Sometimes it's a very concrete flashback in which I literally see my hands covered in blood. Or I recall terrorists I encountered in Gaza, or many other complex situations I faced during the war. These memories surface over the course of the day.
The Israeli army is accused of committing war crimes in Gaza. Some international organizations have even called the war a genocide, and these soldiers might be considered perpetrators. Many of the soldiers this therapist sees say they don't regret their actions.
There are people who come to me and say, what I did was hard for me, because these are people who never wanted to kill or to be part of a killing, and they feel very bad about these things on a moral level. It's not a majority of the people I see. Most understand very well why they went to war, but for a few it's an issue.
The objective of this therapy is to help get them combat ready and prepare them to return to the front lines.
I would return to the fighting in Gaza without even blinking, because at the end of the day, it's my country and my fellow citizens, and they need me. I know this sort of talk can sound pretentious, but protecting my country is my job as a soldier, and they need me, because if I don't do it, who will?
Israel is still in shock from October 7th. Around 100 hostages still remain in Hamas captivity. Every Saturday night in Tel Aviv, the public squares are taken over by people mourning and expressing their pain. Israelis publicly expressing their opposition to the war are a minority. 176 Israeli army reservists have signed a letter indicating their refusal to return to military service. Yuval Green is one of them, and he's confident in his decision despite some disagreements with his own family.
He thinks that we shouldn't cause them unnecessary damage, but I say, if they don't pay for what they did with land, then they'll think they can do it again and again.
I had to put my red line when my commander told us to burn down a house we came out of. He told us every house we're coming out of had to be burnt down. And I said, I'm not willing to do that. I'm not willing to make several families homeless just because this is an order. So I went out of Gaza and never came back. I honestly definitely believe that the movement is growing bigger. The military is trying to put us down quietly. It's not putting us into jail. This means this movement scares them. This movement could be effective even though we are not as big and we don't have as big numbers as, other movements do have.
The Israeli Defense Forces declined our request to provide the exact number of reservists who've refused to fight. They did confirm that around 85% of soldiers treated for PTSD are eventually able to return to their units.